The many faces of the Genma are nothing if not great in variety, with a few giving way to some of the most memorable moments throughout the series, while others being directly responsible for many of Onimusha's key events. Out of all of these key figures, the most influential Genma is arguably the Genma scientist Guildenstern. Many of the journal entries found between Onimusha Warlords and Onimusha 3 Demon Siege are written by this one Genma, who both sheds a great deal of light on the Genma's past in society, and is also behind the creation of many notable Genma, including the resurrection of Nobunaga, the creation of Genma like Reynaldo, Zmoh, and Brainstern, and the conversion of humans like Ranmaru, Murakoto, and the warrior who was once Garganto. He is a commonly recurring and highly memorable character with whom Samanosukie became acquainted not long after defeating Osric, until finally defeating him in Demon Siege. However, what would have happened if Samanosukie managed to slay him before he defeated Fortinbras? If Guildenstern died during Warlords, how would future games have changed? Upon entering the demon world in Warlords after the death of Hecuba, Samanosukie is faced with the Genma scientist who claims that he may not enter. But after Samanosukie mocks him, Guildenstern chastises his tone. But as he is about to call Marcellus to fight him, Samanosukie takes the opportunity to attack, using the magic from his Enryu to immolate the scientist before he has the chance to escape. While that one attack alone may not have been enough to be fatal, Guildenstern is caught off guard, giving Samanosukie the chance to rush in and drive the broadsword through his heart. Guildenstern uses his last breath to call Marcellus, who appears like normal to fight the Oni, but the scientist dies as the fight is about to begin. Naturally, Samanosukie overcomes Marcellus and moves forward. The rest of Warlords would obviously occur the same as normal, and after defeating Fortinbras and escaping the demon world with Nobunaga, Samanosukie disappears in order to learn how to control his Onimusha power. As before, after defeating Tatsuoki Saito and sieging the Inabayama castle in 1567, Nobunaga rises to power in Fortinbras' place, becoming the new Genma Lord thanks to his strength and ambition. In 1573, he still razes the Yagyu village to the ground, but with no Guildenstern, there is no one to build for him the golden evil statue, so that does not appear in any capacity. He still commissions it, which leads to the Genma still taking control of the Imasho gold mine, but without minds like Guildenstern, no one is able to finish it in time. The events of that game occur the same as normal regardless, at least until Jubei bids a final farewell to Oyu and descends into the Genma structure to confront Nobunaga. This time, Nobunaga is not waiting there alone. He is instead accompanied by Garganto, who Jubei is forced to face first. In this scenario, Nobunaga isn't relying on powering the statue, essentially leaving his mission down to a matter of time before his victory is guaranteed. Instead, Nobunaga knows that Jubei is coming and sees him as the only loose end that needs tying, so he enlists Garganto to help defeat him, if only to be certain that there's no risk taken. This would also likely be encouraged by Garganto himself due to the death of Guildenstern, for whom he had a great respect, reasoning that Jubei is a very clear threat if he can best such a swordsman. In the first half of the fight, Garganto's greater strength threatens to overwhelm Jubei entirely, similar to his cannon fight with Samanosuke. Eventually, Jubei deems it necessary to take on his Oni form thanks to the Genma's strength and skill. Upon transforming, Jubei gains a significant boost to his own strength, which not only closes the gap, but completely turns the fight around, eventually leading to Jubei overpowering and killing Garganto. Upon his death, his body explodes, but thanks to his Oni form, Jubei resists the blast. Naturally, so does Nobunaga, who finally decides to stand and face Jubei himself, and he immediately transforms into his empowered Genma form. Unfortunately, even with his Oni form, Jubei proves too weak to fight off the Warlord's assault, and he once again finds himself backed against the wall. Now, I imagine you're already questioning why this is happening, even though, in canon, Jubei defeats Genma Nobunaga while in his human form. To put it simply, I would argue that, by his own admission, Nobunaga was actually quite significantly weakened in canon. That is because, according to himself, he had transferred his own strength into the Golden Evil statue, which is why it required Jubei's true Onimusha transformation to combat it. Nobunaga's transference of his own power left him so weakened that Jubei didn't need to transform in order to fight him, which is further evident due to his repeated need to recharge his own power during the fight itself. As Jubei is pushed back and clearly overwhelmed, he reinforces his faith in the Oni and absorbs the strength of the Oni orbs, transforming into his true Onimusha form. This gives him the strength he needs in order to combat Nobunaga, and eventually he is able to defeat him. As both return to their human forms, Jubei, seeing that Nobunaga is too weak to fight anymore, takes the opportunity to kill him, cutting him down and fleeing the Genma structure as it collapses on top of him. With no Guildenstern, Nobunaga is left incapable of being revived, and another power vacuum occurs within not only the Genma, but the Oda clan as well. While the line of succession is decided, Tokichiro takes temporary control of the clan, but this does not last long. By 1574, Tokichiro himself names Nobunaga's son, Nobutada Oda, as the new lord of the Oda clan. 17 years old at this point, Nobutada has already gained significant respect as an extremely talented commander due to his exploits during the siege of Iwamura Castle in February 1574, and the third siege on Ise Nagashima the same year. As a result, when his half-uncle, Nobuhiro Oda, attempts to drum up support for his own call to power, just about the entire clan pledges complete loyalty to Nobutada, and Nobuhiro is forced to concede. As if fate itself were to prove him wrong, while Nobutada further proves his ability as a commander, Nobuhiro is eventually killed not long before the Oda clan finally claimed victory and broke the Nagashima siege. In 1575, after another successful attack on Iwamura Castle, Nobutada would launch a second attack on Odani Castle, successfully killing Nagamasa and burning the castle. Katara reports the attack to Jubei, who asks the young ninja to help Oyu, to which Katara agrees. With this help, Oyu and her children successfully survive and escape the siege. This successful attack on Odani Castle caused the Genma to finally show their respect for Nobutada and accept him as the new Genma Lord. Over the next 7 years, Nobutada rises to power and essentially takes his father's role entirely. This, of course, means that the events of Blade Warriors never happens, and with Garganto already dead, Kaede also survives and remains with Samanosuke while they continue to fight the Genma over the next 7 years. Naturally, this would lead to Kaede eventually being contacted by the Oni and made into an Oni warrior, gaining her own gauntlet and even her own Oni weapon, a pair of sai similar to Tenso that harness light, Kagayaku. With this, Samanosuke quickly takes the chance to begin teaching her how to control her own Onimusha power that she has inevitably gained, just in case she's forced to use it like he was against Fortinbras. This means that she survives long enough to reach the events of Demon Siege. What has significantly crippled the Genma, however, is their severe lack of high-class Genma by 1582. Thanks to Guildenstern's death 22 years prior, barely any powerful Genma are left, including Genma-Ranmaru, Brainstern, and Marcellus. At this point, the only notable Genma left besides Nobutada himself are Gertrude and Vega Donna, the latter of which is married to Nobutada now rather than Nobunaga. Before the attack on Honnoji takes place, Nobutada requests reinforcements from his wife, and Vega immediately musters all available Genma forces and uses a Genma tank to transport them. As one would expect, both Samanosuke and Kaede manage to infiltrate the tank and reach the main chamber, where instead of the two large Genma we see, the two are met with Gertrude, who has been assigned to guard the chamber. While the battle is fairly long, the two Oni manage to break through its armour and defeat the creature, forcing Veiga Donna to fight the Oni herself, initially demanding they bow to the Genma Queen, with the Oni simply preparing to fight instead. Veiga begins her attack, but against two Oni, she is rendered woefully outclassed. However, while she and Kaede are too focused on the fight to even notice, the fight moves from a 2-on-1 to only 1-on-1. Quite early on in the fight, Samanosuke seems to notice that Kaede is clearly doing most of the heavy lifting. Not because she's stronger, but because she is the perfect pick for this kind of fight. Veiga is an agile fighter, relying on her speed and agility to keep her foes off balance, but Kaede is a career ninja with decades of experience, and this fight plays to all of her strengths. Not expecting to fight someone capable of keeping up with her agility, Veiga is the one thrown off balance instead, and Samanosuke, noticing this, steps back while Kaede ends up outclassing the Genma Queen, deciding that he would be too slow to be of any real help. As a result, Kaede successfully kills Veiga, who laments that she was unable to die in Nobutada's arms. It's only as she looks back towards Samanosuke that she notices that he essentially left Veiga to her alone. She questions why, and he tells her that seeing how easily she was able to keep up with Veiga, he realised that he would have only got in the way. It was obvious quite early on that she was more than able to handle her on her own. Kaede smiles at Samanosuke's confidence in her, and they prepare to destroy the tank. Samanosuke cuts the tube holding the chamber above the brain like normal, and he uses Shippu to soften the fall for them both. They both get caught in the explosion, but soon regain consciousness to see that nothing is left. Seeing that their mission is complete, they return to MitsuHIDE and join in the assault on Honnoji Temple. Of course, no Guildenstern means no time folder, so outside of the initial attack on Honnoji, the events of Demon Siege are essentially skipped. With no notable Genma left, Samanosuke and Kaede blitz through the temple grounds and reach Nobutada, who is left only with Ranmaru to fight for him. Nobutada, upon noticing the two Oni, promises that he would not fall victim to the same fate as his father at the hands of the Oni. As Samanosuke and Kaede prepare to fight, Ranmaru steps up to challenge them. Obviously, Samanosuke fights him alone and dominates him like normal, leaving Nobutada to face them alone. He begins launching magic fireballs, but while Samanosuke dodges like he does at the end of the game, Kaede's natural agility means she isn't knocked down like Jacques was, and they both rush him, with Kaede's speed barely able to keep up with Nobutada's movements, but without the strength needed to break through his defences. As time goes on, they prove outmatched by the Warlord, but as he prepares to finish them off, they decide to both transform into their Oni forms, giving them the strength to turn the tables. Nobutada's attacks quickly become highly ineffective, and the two Onis completely overwhelm him. However, as Nobutada is backed into a corner, he transforms as well, becoming a Genma form much like his father, and he once again overpowers the two, even with their Oni forms. Eventually, they are pushed to the brink of death, but their gauntlets resonate with them and they both transform into true Onimushas, once again shifting control of the fight. With two Onimushas facing them, Nobutada is left outmatched entirely and he is finally defeated. As they all return to their human forms, the Onis, exhausted by their brutal struggle, take the opportunity to finish off Nobutada, neither of them holding the anti-darkness charm necessary to seal him. They both manage to escape the temple as it crumbles on top of him, burning his body as a result. Still, with no Guildenstern, Nobutada is also unable to be revived, so once they escape the temple and find somewhere to rest, they consider this a mission complete. A couple of weeks later, when Tokachiro, now named Hideyoshi, returns from his foreign campaign and slays MitsuHIDE in Yamazaki, both Samanosuke and Kaede disappear, promoting the narrative that they both died with Nobutada and changing their identities to Tenkai and Otsune, also changing their weapons to staves and naginatas respectively. Due to not being able to seal Nobutada, they both keep their gauntlets rather than leave them in storage like Tenkai did. Since Jacques never became involved, Akko was never assigned to help them, so Otsune ends up taking Arin's role from now on, and they begin staying in Enryaku Temple. However, with Hideyoshi now rising to power in the wake of Nobutada's death, they remain wary, concerned that he could begin following in Nobutada's footsteps. Over the next few years, they watch as he unites Japan under the rule of the newly named Toyotomi clan. He eventually adopts Ogimaru from Ieyasu Tokugawa and renames him Hideyasu Toyotomi. However, Ieyasu is requested by one of his most trusted vassals to go with the young boy and act as his guardian and teacher. Ieyasu allows this once Hideyoshi agrees, the latter wanting Hideyasu to become a great warrior, and as a result, Hideyasu becomes the lifelong student of Tadakatsu Heihachiro Honda. Remember, because the events following Jacques' displacement in time never happened, Heihachi is not killed by Ranmaru in Azuchi Castle, so he now acts as the bodyguard and tutor of Hideyasu. Of course, while that would normally mean that he would train Hideyasu as a spearman, he decides to encourage his preference with broadsword due to inheriting lamentation from his mother, seeing that Hideyasu holds sentimental value with it. Hideyasu, as a result, grows to become a warrior of great skill, and with Heihachi staying with him for most of his life, the two share a very close bond, with Hideyasu viewing him as almost a father figure. He joins Hideyasu during the Kyushu assault, proud of the warrior he's become, but also shares Hideyasu's horror at the brutality of it. Once Hideyasu is named the new head of the Yuki household and gains the name Yuki, he and Heihachi are sent abroad in 1592 during the invasion of Korea. The two are both equally horrified at the nature of the battle, and when Hideyasu vows never to pick up his sword again afterwards, Heihachi shares this decision, refusing to partake in any more cruel wars. Once 1596 rolls around and the Omen Star appears in the sky, the Genma begin to reappear, and Hideyasu and Heihachi both pick up their weapons once again. Tenkai's encounter with Claudius in Sakai progresses like normal, and he is forced to flee after being dropped from the rooftops following the Darkstone's activation. However, Hideyasu appears the next day to fight off the Genma alongside Heihachi, though the latter finds himself unable to damage the Genma due to their immunity to pure humans. This means that Stage 1 occurs without any changes, except for Heihachi simply making sure that the child is taken away from danger while Hideyasu fights off the Genma. Now, one could argue that Heihachi should be able to fight here due to his Genma Tombo, but I'm going to argue otherwise here, due to similar logic that is mentioned by Akane. According to her, the Yagyu sword is a weapon that is capable of killing Genma, however this only works if held by a Yagyu. If a regular human were to use it, it would have no effect on the Genma, so I'm going to use the same logic here with Heihachi's Genma Tombo. After fighting off the Genma in Sakai, the two learn of the nature of the Genma trees, and begin to burn them, leading to Hideyasu gaining the nicknames Soki and Blue Demon. In 1597, once the two meet and begin travelling with Minokichi, Soki expresses a hope that Heihachi will gain the ability to kill Genma, and Minokichi suggests using contacts within the Mino clan to help him. Thanks to the aid of the Mino clan, who managed to get them in contact with the Oni, they not only reveal to Soki that he is the Black Oni, but also make Heihachi an Oni warrior, granting him an Oni gauntlet. The next year, Soki and Heihachi intercept Danyamon, with Heihachi being the one to cut the supports and block the convoy off. The sight of Heihachi, however, enrages Danyamon, as he recognises the spearman and in turn Soki, calling them both traitors to Hideyoshi as he dismounts his horse to fight. Soki faces off against Danyamon while Heihachi dispatches the Genma, and, as one would expect, Danyamon is handily defeated. They begin burning the trees, with Munenori and Ohatsu noticing, immediately recognising Heihachi. Other than that, the scene remains identical. A week later, Akane arrives in the plains of Suruga following the rumours of the Blue Demon. Soki and Heihachi are told of a child nearby like normal, and they leave their hideout to find her. Akane is startled by Minokichi, but when Soki and Heihachi appear to stop her from killing him, she initially prepares for battle, until she notices Heihachi's gauntlet, recognizing it as an Oni gauntlet. Knowing that at least one of them is an Oni warrior, she calms down enough to listen to Soki as he explains that his Blue Demon nickname is purely based on his armor rather than a literal description, a fact that Heihachi confirms. With this knowledge, she accepts her mistake and apologizes, to which they accept and introductions are made, the both of them shocked when she reveals her identity as Jubei Yagyu. Unfortunately, they are unable to make it back to the hideout in time and are caught in the Genma attack. Jubei attempts to dissuade Soki from fighting, still unaware that he is also an Oni, but he begins effortlessly cutting them down, further shocking Akane. With Heihachi with them, they more quickly reach the sealed Genma, unseal it, and slay it. At the hideout, Jubei mentions the rumours of cherry trees in Satop Pass, something that catches Soki and Heihachi's attention, and they agree to go there. Heihachi sticks with Soki to attract attention until Jubei is able to sneak inside and open the gate. When they climb the warehouse, Jubei lets Soki and Heihachi go first, and they are both met by Munenori, who, on top of recognizing the Blue Demon, takes a quick jab at Heihachi, calling him a traitor to Hideyoshi, much like Danyamon did. He attacks like normal for a moment, but is pushed back quite easily by both Oni, until Jubei attacks and orders them both to burn the trees ahead. Soki attempts to ask Heihachi to stay and back her up, but she angrily refuses, demanding them both not to interfere, and they begrudgingly move ahead. As they reach the trees, Ohatsu fires a warning shot, revealing herself to them. She attempts to dissuade Soki like usual, but on top of his defiant nature and clear hatred for Hideyoshi's actions, Heihachi chimes in and describes in greater detail the horror of the foreign war that they were sent to fight in, asking if she's really able to accept serving a lord that would enact such atrocities. They both try to convince her that she's better than that, but Ohatsu just starts weeping like usual, before apologizing and threatening to shoot them. Despite being angered by her using his real name, Soki asks Heihachi to let him handle this. Naturally, he effortlessly overwhelms and disarms her, and they both try to convince her to join them, only to be interrupted by Munenori. He tells them that Jubei has been disciplined and challenges them to get past him, but Soki quickly attacks the Yagyu, demanding that Heihachi focus on saving Jubei while he deals with Munenori. Heihachi hesitates, not wanting to leave Soki alone against such a dangerous opponent, but ultimately relents and rushes toward Jubei while Soki begins to fight Munenori. Despite the Yagyu's warnings, Soki is able to defeat him, but before he's able to finish Munenori off, Ohatsu fires another warning shot at his feet, still fearing that if Munenori is killed, Hideyoshi would just trigger the Genma insects in her body instead, hoping that staying on Munenori's good side would further convince him to keep her alive. Using this opportunity, Munenori uses a smoke bomb to flee with Ohatsu in tow. Meanwhile, Heihachi manages to barely reach Jubei in time and cut the fuse, saving her life and freeing her. He escapes the fortress with her, and while she initially chastises him for abandoning Soki, they both notice smoke beginning to rise from the fortress, realizing that Soki had successfully begun burning the trees, and he soon catches up to them afterwards, showing clear relief that Jubei is still alive. He and Heihachi bandage her wounds, and Jubei, relieved that they were able to burn the trees, asks what happened to Munenori, and Soki tells her that Ohatsu managed to help him escape. He explains who Ohatsu is, and while she is annoyed that she couldn't defeat him, she's at least glad that Soki didn't kill him before she could, while Soki is openly concerned that Ohatsu would help him escape, claiming that it isn't like her to help someone like him. The group agree to head directly towards Kyoto to confront and defeat Hideyoshi, and reach Sawayama where they are caught in Tenkai's illusion and separated. He confronts Heihachi first, noting the Oni gauntlet on his arm, and the spearman demands to know where Soki and Jubei are. Upon seeing the illusion of their dead bodies, he is driven to near madness with rage, immediately attacking Tenkai for the apparent murder of Soki. His relentless assault leaves Tenkai incapable of doing anything other than defend, eventually choosing to try and calm him by confirming that the bodies are in fact illusions. As Heihachi sees them vanish, he at least calms down enough to process what Tenkai is saying, the monk telling him that he simply needed to see his Oni spirit. Heihachi asks who he is, but Tenkai says he'll tell him soon once his job is done, and leaves to confront Soki. This encounter remains the same, and once their fight is done and they defeat the Genma guarding the area, the group reconvene and Heihachi is left beyond relieved to see them both alive, while still extremely wary of the monk, forcing Soki to calm him down. Tenkai apologizes to the spearman and reveals his identity and mission, and they agree to an alliance. Tenkai tells them of the imprisoned Roberto, and Jubei is sent to act as a decoy, with both Soki and Heihachi going with Tenkai into the dungeons. The meeting with Roberto plays out the same, with the Westerner getting aggressive and fighting Soki before leaving through the secret passage to find Louis Frois before Sakon approaches and fights them. The three of them prove too much for the warrior, but are left trapped in the dungeon before Ohatsu lowers a rope for Soki from the well above them. The conversation between these two also plays out the same, but before they leave, Soki actually takes the time to call down to the others, telling them of his plan to find MitsuHIDE, and Tenkai tells him that he and Heihachi will be able to find their own way out. Soki, reassured that they'll be okay, goes with Ohatsu into the castle. Of course, Munenori intercepts them and forces Ohatsu back to his side, but when faced with the prospect of fighting Soki again, he feels forced to take off his eye patch now, using his demon eye against the Oni. Regardless, Soki is victorious and Munenori escapes like normal. The rest of the stage lines back up like canon, and after confronting Claudius and working with Roberto to defeat the trapped Genma, the group agree to head straight to Kyoto in order to burn the Genma Mother Tree. In Kyoto, once the group reconvene at the entrance to Daigo Temple, Jubei and Roberto rush off to face Munenori and Louis Frois, while Heihachi and Tenkai attempt to stop Soki from running off, only to be stopped by Sakon. Heihachi takes the initiative and tells Tenkai to deal with MitsuHIDE while he fights Sakon, and the battle becomes a 2v2. While Soki's initial confrontation of Hideyoshi remains the same, Heihachi is eventually able to defeat Sakon and tries to remind him of his honour as a warrior, speaking as one proud spearman to another. This causes Sakon to start fighting the control of Ophelia's mask, though he is still unable to break its grip and is simply left writhing in pain. Tenkai tells Heihachi to find Soki before he is killed by Hideyoshi, and Heihachi rushes off. Soki is still defeated after being toyed with by the Warlord, but before Hideyoshi prepares to kill him, Heihachi arrives and stands firm in his defense. Angered by this, Hideyoshi deems their rebellious nature as traits inherited from or taught by Ieyasu Tokugawa, and he easily defeats Heihachi. Soki is still able to inspire Ohatsu to finally break away and rush to Soki's side, but Heihachi's attack is blocked like normal by Tenkai, who tells them to head to Mount Hiei, calling Soki humanity's last hope. However, before Hideyoshi's attack consumes him, Heihachi uses the last of his strength to push Tenkai out of the way and begins blocking the attack himself, telling Tenkai to ensure Soki's survival. Soki begs Heihachi to go with them, but the spearman tells him that this is his duty, and that he is proud to see it through to the end, praising Soki for becoming a far greater warrior than he could have ever hoped to be. As the attack swallows him, Tenkai grabs Soki and Ohatsu and flees Kyoto with them. Unfortunately, Heihachi does not survive the attack, giving his life to ensure their escape. Soki, having known Heihachi for most of his life, is heavily affected by Heihachi's death, taking the time to mourn him. Ohatsu does her best to console him, and Tenkai apologizes for not being able to save him. Eventually, the group reach Mount Hiei, but like normal, Ohatsu collapses as Munenori triggers the Genma insects in her body, threatening to transform her into a Genma tree. While Minokichi initially tells Soki to kill her before she turns, Tenkai quickly shoots down the idea, claiming there to be a way to purify her. They take her to Enryaku Temple where they meet Otsune, who is given a quick rundown of Ohatsu's situation, and they tell Soki of the Oni gate that would allow him to become an Onimusha, giving him the power needed to purify her. However, due to the time restriction of the gate, they also agree to begin preparing purification charms just in case Soki fails. In the end, Soki breaks the gate open from the inside and successfully purifies Ohatsu, the both of them thanking Tenkai and Otsune for their help. Once Ohatsu is given a new set of less baggy armour, they all agree to stay in Enryaku Temple for now. Soon, Munenori's aerogram arrives and Tenkai goes with Soki and Ohatsu to Azuchi Castle in order to save Jubei. This stage remains more or less unchanged apart from the fact that they reach and defeat Munenori faster with Tenkai also around. Also, given that he already began using it in Sawayama Castle, Munenori begins the fight with his Demon Eye already active, though it doesn't really change anything in the end, and he is once again forced to flee. Once they get Jubei back to Mount Hiei and introductions are made with Ohatsu and Otsune, Jubei notices that Heihachi isn't with them, and they sorrowfully tell her what happened, leaving her shocked and angry that he didn't survive. They are soon told of the San Espana, realising that Roberto is likely to be there, though Otsune finds Jubei alone and has a heart-to-heart with her. Instead of Arin's more bubbly attitude, Otsune acts more like a mentor to Jubei, encouraging her to be more honest, but also telling her to be mindful about what she feels towards Soki, warning her not only of the fact that other people are involved with Soki, but also of the pain that would result if he were to be lost. Jubei understands what she means, and they are soon approached by Soki, who tells them of their new mission to find Roberto. Of course, unlike Arin, Otsune doesn't take the opportunity to tease Jubei here. Once again, the only change in this stage is that it is made overall easier thanks to Tenkai also being present, and they save Roberto after Luis takes back temporary control of his body. Roberto eventually wakes up and accepts his new allies like normal, and after 2 months of recovery, decides to head back to Sawayama Castle to find his keepsake. The group go with him, and this stage is pretty much unchanged, again with the only exception being Tenkai also going with them. Once they return, the group discuss their next move, and Tenkai mentions the Dark Stone in Sakai, explaining that it is likely essential to the Genma's plans. Roberto concurs, saying that it is likely housed within the Toyokuni research facility, and that his keepsake is actually a key to get inside. The group agree and infiltrate the facility, with Roberto accessing the computer systems to discover the Genma's plan and revealing how to reach the Dark Stone underground. They destroy the generators to access the emergency elevator and reach the Dark Stone, but when Ohatsu prepares to fire on it, Tenkai quickly tells her not to, telling her that it is impervious to most forms of damage, stepping aside as Roberto approaches it instead. Claudius approaches them like normal, and the conversation plays out the same, with Roberto beginning to pummel the stone and the rest of the party fighting Claudius. Inevitably, he is pushed back, and Roberto successfully destroys the Dark Stone, with Claudius revealing the Genma's plans once Soki calls him by his real name before retreating. After returning to Mount Hiei, Roberto fills the party in about the Genma's plan, including Tenkai and Otsune, and once they decide to find the San Felipe in Sakai, instead of staying behind like Arin, Otsune insists on coming with them, not willing to sit on the sidelines anymore. Don't forget that there is no gauntlet to seal here since Nobutada wasn't sealed away like his father, and due to the Oni magic surrounding the temple, by Arin's own admission, no Genma is capable of approaching, meaning the Oni gate is also safe. Even Munenori was kept away from Mount Hiei because of the Oni barrier, which is why he was forced to use an aerogram in Stage 9. With no urgent responsibilities in Enryaku Temple, Tenkai agrees to have Otsune join them, though the rest of the party worries about her, if only because they've yet to see whether or not she's able to fight. The party reaches the San Felipe, and when Sakon appears to stop them, Tenkai and Soki both stay behind to fight him off, defeating him fast enough to rush towards the ship before it leaves this time. Regardless, Sakon still manages to reach them, but before he is able to destroy the ship, Otsune speeds forward and knocks him off balance, telling Soki and Tenkai to be ready to purify him. Tenkai and Otsune utilize their charms as Sakon tries to regain his footing, and with their effects in place, Soki strikes him with Requiem, causing Ophelia's mask to shatter entirely, leaving Sakon to fall into the water. The party is highly impressed at Otsune's skill, though she jokes that as fast as she is, Jubei would likely still be able to keep up, much to Jubei's joy. When Soki is contacted mid-journey by Fortinbras, both Tenkai and Otsune appear to break contact, both sensing that something about him is wrong. Stage 14 is fairly similar, Though with Otsune now also here, she quickly notices with Tenkai the dark aura emanating from Ophelia, both able to tell who she really is despite her disguise. While Ohatsu cracks and begs the party not to fight, Otsune calmly reasons that it cannot be her sister, especially given her clear sadism and desire to kill them. After taking a moment to see just how different this Cha-Cha is to her real sister, Ohatsu's demeanour drastically shifts, flying into a fury as she begins viciously firing shot after shot into Ophelia, continuing even after the Genma falls to the ground, enraged at her attempt to use her sister's face to manipulate her, until Otsune and Soki are able to slowly calm her down. Of course, Ophelia finally takes the chance to shed her disguise and reveal her true form, furious at Ohatsu's relentless attack. But in a 1v6 battle against the party, Ophelia is impossibly outmatched and defeated, with Ohatsu still taking a moment to finish her off, though her dark magic does allow her to discreetly escape. From here, things remain pretty much identical, even with Otsune involved, at least until the party finally reaches Kyoto following Minokichi's sacrifice. For now, the only real change is that both Tenkai and Otsune stay behind to face Claudius, Otsune obviously not happy with the idea of Tenkai facing him alone. Other than that, things remain the same until Munenori takes the Genma seed and uses it to revive the serpent god Fortinbras. While neither of their gauntlets holds the sealed power of a Genma lord, Tenkai and Otsune both give Soki their gauntlets, hoping that the combined Oni power would be enough to trigger his transformation into the God of Darkness. Once the party gives their strength, Soki successfully transforms and fights the Genma god, eventually defeating him. This leads to the true Fortinbras' appearance, Soki defying and eventually destroying him, and Soki using his full godly power to sacrifice himself to destroy the Omen Star. As the Genma disappear following Fortinbras' death, Tenkai and Otsune return to Mount Hiei, satisfied that their mission is finally complete. With no gauntlet left to seal, they begin to wonder what to do next, until Tenkai remembers a conversation with Soki where he suggests becoming teachers once the Genma are beaten. Otsune agrees with the idea, and they get in contact with Sekishusai Yagyu with the help of Jubei. Once they arrive in the Yagyu village, Tenkai and Otsune tell of their long history with the Oni, and when offering to help in teaching the younger generations of Yagyu, Sekishusai is more than happy to accept, offering them both a place within the village. As a result of having Tenkai and Otsune as teachers on top of Sekishusai, the next generation of Yagyus grow up to be extremely powerful and wise warriors. Content with their new life, Tenkai and Otsune finally settle down together, and eventually have a son that they name Mitsuyasu Nankobo, who as he grows up, joins the next generation of Yagyus and trains to become a warrior in his own right. Years later, Tenkai and Otsune bring Mitsuyasu to the grave of Soki, far later than when Jubei does so 2 years after his death, and they tell the story of who Soki was, and why his memory is so heavily respected. However, Mitsuyasu quickly notices a second gravestone next to it, and asks why there are two. They tell him that that one belongs to a warrior of unshakable honour, one who stood against the impossible to ensure that they could survive. It was the grave of Tadakatsu Heihachiro Honda, who was remembered for his proud last stand against Hideyoshi, giving them the chance to escape and find a way to defeat the Genma. Inspired by the courage of the late Soki and Heihachi, Mitsuyasu resolves to dedicate himself to his training in the hopes that he will become a worthy warrior like those who came before him. And I think that's a good place to end it. To be honest, it was nice to finally be able to have a scenario where Samanosuke and Kaede both live long enough to see the end of the Genma. Funny how few notable Genma were left by the time Demon Siege rolled around, simply because Guildenstern wasn't there to engineer more. It honestly just shows how over-reliant the Genma really were on him. It was cool to have a scenario where Heihachi survived too, acting as a teacher and perhaps almost a father figure to Soki. I feel like he at least deserved a more dignified end than being caught in a trap off-screen and left for dead. As for the young Mitsuyasu, I decided to go with that name due to a known tradition at the time of either carrying a family name throughout generations, like Nobunaga naming his children Nobutada, Nobukatsu, Nobutaka, etc., or choosing a name by taking parts of the name of people they respected. A good example of this is actually Hideyoshi, who picked that name between the late 1560s and early 1570s by using the names of MitsuHIDE Akechi and YOSHInari Mori. With that logic, Tenkai named his son Mitsuyasu after his uncle Mitsuhide and Hideyasu, the two people he respected the most, at least out of those not still alive by this point. With that, I'll sign off here. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Take care everyone. Danish out.